I'm Danielle Johnson, IAPP Certified Governance Expert for Galson, your trusted tech resource. You need to have a large group of stakeholders throughout the entire development lifecycle. So at the start, you need to make sure you have your legal team, your privacy team. You're going to make sure that you have your data team and also your information security team, and make sure that on the front end of developing any tool or application, that you have the insight from these teams to make sure that you're on the right path. You also want to make sure that through the development lifecycle, those teams aren't hindering it. So making sure that those teams understand they need to input the least amount of restrictions and still allow for innovation, because if there's too much restriction, your product won't actually be effective. It won't allow for innovation, and it won't allow for a good customer experience. So striking that balance by trusting the team that you're working with and having those stakeholders at the beginning of the development, as well as checkpoints throughout the development lifecycle to make sure that nothing is veered off or is in danger of crossing over any regulations or laws. That's really the best way to try to tackle balancing both that customer experience and the data privacy needs of the company. So there's a lot that goes into making sure that your AI is ethical. You need to have really clean data going in. So if you only have a small set of data while you're building out this AI tooling, you're going to have biased data. Therefore, you're going to have biased decisions because you don't have a large enough data pool. You need to make sure that you have the right legal team involved in the data that you're choosing to utilize. They are going to help with that, making sure that the data is broad enough to make sure that you're not violating any regulations or laws around bias, especially for those tools that are making any decisions. There's a lot that can happen around race and gender and socioeconomic level. So making sure that you're accounting for the bias that will come through the data and not having that broad enough data and having a human in the loop every single time you have a decision-making tool in place. So the US is kind of behind when it comes to broad regulations for AI. There are some state level that have been passed. However, globally, there are a lot more regulations. And then there are other regulations that aren't necessarily catered towards AI that would still apply. So in the UK, we have regulations. There's the EU AI Act. Singapore has its own act. So there's actual global regulations that have been passed that if you're doing business with those countries, you're going to need to make sure that your business is compliant with these policies. You're able to show proof that you're compliant through internal audits for now. Eventually, there will be external audits, that you understand your risk level and how not only internally you develop and determine your risk, but also how that country's policies determine your risk level with your AI offerings. So making sure that you're preparing for not only the US regulations that are being passed. Like I said, at this time, there's no true federal level regulation. There are states, so you need to be mindful of that. But also looking forward to your global presence and the regulations there. So for any policy, the most important part is buy-in from the stakeholders. A lot of times companies will implement these policies and forget that there's other departments that it affects. So in my business, in companies I've worked with before, the biggest thing is having the right stakeholders at the table. So you want to have representatives from legal, because you need to make sure the contracts are in place the correct way. You want to have representatives from HR for those that are in violation of policy. What is that tiered approach to either reprimanding the employee or giving them more education about how to safely follow the policies? Now you're going to have your technology side, your engineers, those who are actually building and using the AI tooling. What policies and procedures are they going to need to follow to make sure that they're safely implementing and creating these new technologies? And then for your information side, you want to know what information is actually approved data, what is approved to go into the tooling. You're not going to want to expose every tool to all of your data. So having those really clear-cut guidelines on that is really important when implementing these policies. Another one is around your CISO organization. So how is your information security team protecting the data? There's new risks that come with AI tooling. And how is your company, staying up to date with what those risks are. What tools do you have in place to help protect it? How are you scanning these tools? Is it different from your normal SaaS or IaaS or whatever tools that you're using? Is it the same tooling that you need? Will you need different tools for that? Also thinking about finance. How are you going to pay for it? What department is going to take responsibility for paying for this tool that may be used across the organization? So it's really important to have those broader conversations, making sure that you have stakeholders at the C-level talking to each other with experts in the room to tell them the importance of these pieces are important and why they're important, to make sure that your policies go off without a hitch, and then are shifted as they need to as the business needs change. As our businesses start to integrate technology more and more, governance in general is one of the most important things that you need to be a successful business. Every business has a need for governance, and the risk becomes greater and greater the more you integrate technology. So having strong governance in place, making sure that you're protecting your customers, your business, your reputation, it's a great need that a lot of businesses tend to underestimate until the need actually comes up and regulators, laws come into place, and then often companies are scrambling to make sure that they have proper governance in place. As technology integrates more and more into our everyday lives and every business that we integrate with, the need for governance is even greater than it has been in the past. Governance helps to control how things are implemented, what's implemented, and the process to make sure there is a trusted process that safeguards not only your business, but your customers and the data that you manipulate on a day-to-day basis.